Although absent of the Souls title, Japanese developer From Software's latest experience is a Souls game at heart. From its gothic horror aesthetic to its brutal and fast-paced combat, Bloodborne is just as addicting as its spiritual predecessors. Bloodborne's atmosphere sets the tone for your 40-plus hour adventure through the bowels of Yharnam. As expected from this developer, death literally waits for you around every corner. Although proven to be a difficult series, I never really felt the game was too punishing. Through determination, skill, and perseverance, I was able to overcome every obstacle From Software threw at me. Through each deadly encounter, Bloodborne provided a thought-provoking and ultimately rewarding experience. From Software may have created the PlayStation 4's best exclusive to date. Period. From has absolutely nailed the atmospheric setting for this game. The player truly feels like something dark and sinister has happened to Yharnam. While exploring the troubled city, if you carefully listen to your surroundings, you may hear the sound of a werewolf howling in the distance, or the cough of an afflicted citizen. Yharnam itself feels like a 19th century London. Tall clock towers, grand cathedrals, and buildings embedded with beautiful scrollwork are only some of the locales players will visit throughout his or her journey. As with previous games, From Software intentionally tells you little about the world they have created, thus leading to a vastly rewarding system of exploration. The city has a semi-open world approach to it, separated by dark alleys and secret shortcuts. In fact, during my first hours of the game, I had accidentally wandered into the lair of the second boss without actually defeating the first. Developer From Software often rewards its players for deep exploration of the world. Through exploration, the player may find an invaluable item or unlock a shortcut to previous avenues of the city. Although taking notes from both Demon's Souls and Dark Souls, From Software handled the combat quite differently this time around. Rather than a cat-and-mouse methodical approach to combat, Bloodborne tasks the players with a much more aggressive playstyle. Because of the absence of a shield in the secondary weapon slot, Bloodborne issues the player a firearm instead. There are a slew of different guns to choose from, although I found the blunderbuss to be the most effective in action. The firearm is also used for Bloodborne's version of parrying, which opens the enemy attacker to a visceral attack dealing loads of damage. Although there aren't many primary weapons this time around, From Software definitely succeeds in making the player feel like a total badass when wielding them. Each primary weapon has its own awesome transformation. Weapons in the right hand also have the ability to transform mid-attack, thus adding a combo system to the combat. Despite the danger, Yharnam has very few checkpoints spread out across the city. Instead of a bonfire, Bloodborne uses lamps to fit the 19th century atmosphere. These lamps usually appear after the defeat of a boss or at the start of a new area. Because these lamps are so spread out, it may become a chore to constantly trace your steps back, not to mention the long load times after death. Taking inspiration from Demon's Souls, lamps allow the player to return to the hub world of Bloodborne, the Hunter's Dream. Here, the player will have access to shops, repairing and upgrading one's equipment, while also leveling their stats. It's here the player can spend those hard-earned blood echoes to prepare for their struggles ahead. What would a Souls game be without tough bosses? In direct comparison to previous entries in the series, From Software has easily created some of their best and toughest bosses in Bloodborne. Many of the bosses actually have different stages to them, thus changing the dynamic of the hectic battle. For example, midway through one particular boss fight, she will begin the drawn-out process of healing herself. Although a slight annoyance, I found it all the more satisfying to finally take down one of these towering bosses as prey slaughtered appear across the screen. As a massive fan of the Souls series, my anticipation for Bloodborne was through the roof. From Software truly delivered on a fantastic and immensely satisfying journey. The aesthetic and atmospheric setting of Yharnam is mixed with that of a 19th century London and a horror film. Bloodborne successfully drew me into this world, and I couldn't wait to explore every nook and cranny of the afflicted city. With a great atmosphere, awesome enemy and boss design, and a satisfying combat system, From Software has easily created one of the best exclusives on Sony's next-gen console. Although fairly early in 2015, I think it's safe to say that Bloodborne is absolutely Game of the Year material.
Jump across the platforms.